Welcome to the new sound of online radio. Welcome to the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network.
'Cause you make me feel like I've been locked out of heaven.
A mix of today's hits and hard-to-find favorites, combined with the most entertaining and intriguing talk anywhere. This is your sound. This is the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network at upnradio.com.
Hi.
Welcome.
Hi, baby. Welcome, everybody, to On the Fringe Radio with Antoinette.
And Joe Tabanella. Do
Oh
you
my
have a
God.
last name anymore? You don't
I
use
just
your
say
last name?
Antoinette, like
Fair enough,
Madonna.
you're not using my last name. Now you're not using any last name.
Wow.
Oh.
Gonna be like that.
It's going to be like that now.
Wow, that was all right. We need to talk about that later. It is 11 a.m. in the great city of Angels, or as a pretentious friend of mine calls it, Los Angeles. It's 2 p.m. in New York City. It is, 8 o'clock in the evening, sitting down to have dinner, all of our good friends in Rome. And it is 5:45 a.m. in Australia and Sydney. Ciao, Maurizio. I just wanted to give a shout out today to Lele Boy, a wonderful man named Manuele Peragina. He's from Brindisi, Italy. He's one of our fans, and he is an amazing musician. And I just wanted to say peace to you, and thank you for listening, and thank you for all of you. I know we've been very cryptic.
And thank you in advance for creating the music for our logo.
Oh, yeah.
On the Fringe.
Oh,
with
yes.
Antoinette and Joe.
Yes. Thank you. So, yes, it's been quite a week. We just basically rolled into the studio. We were sitting in traffic. So, honestly, it should be called On the Fly Radio. Hi, baby.
Hi.
It's going to be an interesting show. We wanted to first say that we heard a few days ago that our guest, who was our wonderful guest a week before last on Thursday, passed away suddenly, Mr. Robert Pino, who was a life and business alchemist who was an absolutely amazing human being. And he sat here in our chair and had a wonderful time with him. And we found out that he passed away suddenly. So we wanted to give our deepest condolences and to Adela May, his beautiful wife, who they just were very much in love, and let her know that we're here and all of our prayers are with her and her family and Robert Pino's children.
Yeah, it's a shocker.
It is a shocker. It's a shocker, and it's interesting what because we're talking about a lot of that. I find that it must be very difficult to deal with sudden death. I mean, when you're sort of preparing for it, but when it happens suddenly, it's a difficult thing to deal with, obviously. And I, when the only person that I really lost close to me besides my father, who passed at like 98 years old, was my very best friend, Suzanne Kroll. And I found it very interesting because there was a part of me when she passed suddenly last year. There was a part of me that was able to sort of observe that my psyche was not able to handle it. And so little by little, it was like it would shut down. It wouldn't take it in. And it took quite a few days to actually let it in. And that's a very interesting mechanism that I, for myself, noticed that my body and my psyche seemed to know what it could handle, and would let it in and then would stop and say, that's enough, I can't do that. And then I guess there's a process that goes along with sudden, the grief and the loss of somebody so suddenly.
She was a big one. Boy, she was a big loss.
A big loss
really
for so many.
Special person.
Mm-hmm. And still feel her around, people would say all the time, I feel him or I feel her, and I never really experienced that until until we all lost Suzanne. I feel she's like omnipresent in a way. I mean, I feel her. I laugh. I think about her. Or she'll say something funny in my head, or I'll know what she was going to say, and it is it's a comfort in those moments. But one of the other things that I began to think about this week is how death happens every second of every day, everywhere, to everybody. And yet, we're completely unprepared for it. And I started to think about the fact that we're not looking at death. There's got to be a way to look at death. We're not looking at it in the right way. We're not looking at it in the proper way, because it's like we deal with everything else, but that somehow is difficult to deal with. I don't know what I'm talking about, but I do know that keeping a sense of humor, I feel like the good Lord gave us all a sense of humor.
Well, when you're dealing with any kind of pain, oftentimes there are belief systems that either accompany the pain, create the pain, or keep the pain from leaving and healing. And it's funny because the Buddhist would say that suffering, one of the three points of pillars of suffering is illusion, and the fact that we're separate is actually an illusion created by a part of the brain. I think it's the parietal lobe that perceives us as separate from the world, and yet it's crazy to think
that we are separate.
Yeah, because you wouldn't think a white blood cell in your body is separate from the body because it has a boundary. Well, we have a boundary called the skin, but 98% of our electrons are recycled within 1 year. And everything is coming and going within us. We eat, we breathe.
And your skin is porous, so things are coming in, coming out. You're part of the ethers, and it's all in the same soup, so to speak.
And so that's part of the pain, is this idea that you're separate from me, and I lost you, is part of that. As we've been to funerals where people celebrate when someone leaves, because they really, either they have a healthy belief that they didn't go anywhere, and they just feel the pain of loss is still pain of loss, but the added suffering of ideas around the loss creates the suffering, or or they just celebrated because they had beliefs that they're in a better place, but they really believe it. Being a Catholic, you go, oh, they're in a better place, but you're really just trying
There's
to
always a part of you
your
kind of
pain.
just say, right. And I don't know what there's that part of my brain that says, it's like all religions talk about that there's a soul, that and quantum physics talks about that energy never dies, that it just changes form. So all of those things we believe, but I say sometimes, do I really know? What is that?
It's on the fly.
That's my phone going off. Okay, well that's it. We'll wait and not answer that right now. But anyway, I just think that even though we believe something, to know it is would be better.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole thing. It's not so much that you have to believe in a positive idea. It's the beliefs of limitation that create the pain, because a child feels relative suffering just from being alive, but there's no added meaning to anything.
Right.
So they feel hurt, they feel lost, but until they start creating meanings around that loss is where we have the problems.
Right.
Like, I'm not lovable, something's wrong with me, or it's just the first lie, which is I'm separate. Oh my God, look, I'm separate from everything.
Right.
And then it starts to become afraid.
Right.
And after we found out that Robert died, I was thinking about you, and we've...
Me? You were thinking
yeah,
about me?
I was thinking about you because when you think about Peter, Suzanne's husband, and you think about what he must have been going through.
And
not
what
only
he continues to go through.
Not only having a daughter and being the most amazing woman on the planet, but being also a special woman and being so close. And I was thinking about you after Robert died, and I thought, what would if you died today? Like, what would I be feeling? What would I be going through? And I got into it, being the kind of crazy person I tend to be. I actually got into what that would feel like, and I realized a lot of the pain around it was infused with thoughts and beliefs, and they were, I'll never find anyone like that again. I'll never find another person like that again. And I realized, well, that's an idea that creates even more suffering. And then I went underneath that idea, as if I realized the belief under that was, no one really gets me but you. And then I realized that was an idea. And I went deeper into that and realized, I'll never see her again. And that's an idea. And it just kept going and going. And I realized, wow, if you just accept pain on its
own terms,
there's a wisdom and a knowing that springs forth after you accept it on its own terms, if you don't evaluate it, give it meaning, and judge it. It's something deeper, like when I was diagnosed, and I just went into my bed one night and I said,
tell our
I was
tell
I had
our
like
viewers and listeners what you're
people
talking
gave me
about.
6 months to live, and doctors were saying I was going to die in 6 months, and it's funny because Suzanne was there for us every minute, and one day I just said, well, what happens? Let me accept the anger, the fear, the terror of two kids. Let me just
Let me go into this.
Let me go into it rather than running from it. Let me
Right.
accept it on its own terms. And there's a sense of ecstasy and willingness to leave, and no fear. And then there's a Maharshi, Ramna Maharshi. I forget who it was. I think it was him. He died in the about 50 years ago. He was a sage in India, and he said to his devotees when he was dying, they said, "Oh, we're so afraid you're going to leave. We're so afraid you're going to leave. Don't leave us." And he looked at him and he said, "Don't be silly. Where would I go?" And I never understood that. What do you mean, where would you go? You're going to die. But when I was in that state, I realized my consciousness would go no. It would just be exactly as it is now. It's all the thoughts and fears and belief systems that would leave.
Right.
And you're left with just this awareness that you get to in meditation. And it's really interesting.
I keep, as you're talking, flashing to that scene in the movie Fearless, that when the plane goes down or starts to go down, Jeff Bridges'
Which you were
character-
in.
Which I was in.
You were in
Yes, I was in that
Fearless.
movie.
You were Isabella Rossellini's sister. Right?
Yes. And I guess what happens to him is, as the recognition that he is about to die, he lets go of his fear. And he becomes without fear. And in that moment, he is able to not only help, so many people survive on this real true story about a plane crash. A plane lost its hydraulic system going to San Francisco. And he begins to be able to be present, and he's able to help, and then he survives. And then he's able to go into his life, obviously not assimilating so well at first, but he gets to experience what it's like to not have fear. And I think what I understood from the movie is that he becomes aware that there is nowhere to go, that we all are one. We're one. And I think that's why death is so hard, is because it does point to the separation that we all experience from the Creator. If you believe that you're separate somehow, and you're on this planet trying to make it all work and try to figure it out, only to, then die. And I think it gets back to that core thing. So I understand what you're saying about just letting go of all those thoughts and beliefs, but I don't know. It's a gift in a way. When I heard about Robert Pino, and the way I heard about it, it was just so sudden and so jarring. It made me, again, it always brings that thing into focus about being really grateful that life is very thin. It's a blink, and you have a moment, and then that's it, and then you have the moment. So it's constantly recognizing, and we all forget. We get very absorbed in it, and so it makes you feel very, very, very awake. And when that happens, one of the things that I read that Robert Pino's wife wrote was that people wanted to know how he passed because he was quite young, and she said he was very, very, very healthy, but he didn't die he died from a massive heart attack, but not from being unhealthy in his body, and that he was dealing with, she said that he was dealing with a broken heart, and that pain in his heart had cemented. And it was very beautiful, and that's what she felt that he really passed from. So that also for me was a big gift to recognize that where are those places in our lives, in our hearts, where we haven't loved, or we haven't been kind, or because I really do think that lives there, and I think it's important to recognize those things day by day and rectify them in some way in your lives, whether it's with the person who you feel like you've harmed, or doing it inside. Anyway, Hi, honey.
Hi, boy.
Hi, yeah.
Sad, sad.
Sad and yet triumphant. I mean, I've never
Well, what cheered me
experienced-
up is once to get out of that is I realized, I do have an insurance policy. So then suddenly
you know what?
those
It
beliefs.
took a long time for you to
and
work your way to a
thoughts-
joke. I thought, wow. Joe's usually
I
got
thought,
one
well,
in
you
there.
haven't, no.
Yeah.
No.
But you know
just
what?
trying to
Truly,
not
not be so heavy.
burst
But
into tears right now.
yes, but I am so comforted by all that Suzanne accomplished in her life, and Peter's here to talk about Krullapalooza, which is an event that is being put together in Suzanne's memory, and it gathers an incredible array of talent, and it's on April 1st, and so he's here to talk about that event and how to buy tickets to it. It's going to be crazy,
Yeah.
crazy fun, and everything that Suzanne is and was. So we're looking forward to that. Peter Spruyt is joining us.
So let's go to a
I
break
would love
and go
to
get
go to
Peter.
a break and go get Peter. We have
And,
much
we're
to
gonna
talk
put
about.
a video on here.
We'll talk
of,
each other into a frenzy, I'm
what
sure.
video are we showing about
We're going to show Andy, a very close friend of Suzanne's, put together a video, and we're going to show it during the break. So why don't we roll the tape?
Okay.
I wonder how I ever made it through a day. How did I settle for a world in shades of gray?
In 2006, Suzanne won first place in the Jane Magazine short story contest. And it was a true story about her choking on a vitamin. And this is the first line of that story. I have made it crystal clear to my friends and family that I want wailing at my funeral. This whole throwing a party after someone dies to celebrate their life thing is crap. I want people hurling their bodies at my open coffin, screaming my name, followed by why? At my funeral, I will be lying inside my magnificent coffin, camera ready, and next to my coffin will be a poster-sized photo of myself on an easel, a candid color photo. I'll be in mid-laugh, looking radiant, full of life, and all-knowing. This is the girl that I fell in love with when I first met her. This was the sense of humor. This was the dark, wicked sense of humor that Suzanne had. This is how she looked at life. Nothing was off limits when it came to the funny. And this is the first time I met her was 16 years ago. And it was back when I was acting, and it was on an audition for a commercial, and we were paired up together to audition as co-workers at an office. And she was looking at me with her famous, gigantic, soulful eyes, like a Jewish deer. But then she squinted as if to say, great, who's this weird short guy I'm stuck with to go into this audition? She seemed cocky, and I was instantly smitten, and I wanted to impress her. So in the audition, when the director asked us if we had any questions about the commercial, I raised my hand and I said, yes, I do. I have a lot of questions. This office we work in, does it have a dental plan? Is there a break room with snacks? I'm just trying to get oriented. And without missing a beat, Suzanne jumps in and she says, I have a question. I get a sense that this guy and I have had an office affair. And it didn't go well. We slept together maybe once. It wasn't good. And now we're dealing with the aftermath of it. Is that what you're getting to from this? And the director looked at us like we were insane. He said, do you think you could just pretend to be working and then look up at the computer? And when we exited, we walked out of that room, we smiled at each other like two old Catskills comedians would smile at each other, knowing we had this mutual, we were both willing to blow this audition just for a decent joke, a decent laugh. But the joke was on us because we booked the job. And we never looked back. I don't even remember what the spot was. I don't remember what happened that day, but we were instant friends, and I've been trying to make her laugh and impress her ever since. Well, it's Suzanne who taught me about real funny and to always respect the bit. There was no excuses and there were no bounds. For example, when I eventually became a TV writer, I would entertain the writer's room by doing my best imitations of Suzanne's voices and her characters. And you've probably heard her do the pitch-perfect woman from the 1940s movie who's in bed and she's calling for help. And when I would get done ruining these imitations, I decided I had to do this. I would call her on speakerphone from the writer's room. And I remember the first time I did this, I said, "Suzanne, it's Andy. You're on speakerphone with the writer's room, and I need you to do the bit." And she said, I'm in the middle of Trader Joe's right now. And I said, I know, but who have I reached? And there was only the slightest hesitation. Then through the speakerphone, "This is Dr. and Mrs. Gregory Van Horn. I can't get up. I'm infirm. Hello? My husband, he's away. I don't, hello? Hello?" She did 10 minutes in the middle of Trader Joe's, had everybody in the writer's room on the floor. But to come up here and say that Suzanne made us all laugh probably harder than anyone else in our lives, this is something that we all know, that we were all lucky enough to experience if we even spent a moment with her. But the talent that poured out of her. She was as good as it gets, and there was no arguing about that. But the fire that burned inside of her to share that talent, it never went away, ever, ever. No matter what rejection came her way, she just had a love for it. A love for acting and actors, but a true love for what it means to have the privilege to act. Because to her, that's what it was. It was a privilege, and she treated every role as a gift, not her right to work. And I've never seen anything like that. I mean, what a lesson it is to be a true artist. But that's not the only thing that Suzanne taught me. She taught me how to hug. I was in my 30s already. I probably should have known how to do that, but when I first hugged her, she said, "What the hell was that?" I said, "What? I was hugging you." And she said, "No, but what the hell was it? You're patting me on the, what's the pat on the back?" I said, The pat is a cop-out. Are you a pussy? When you hug, you squeeze and you hold it. So the next time I hugged her, I held it a little bit longer, a little bit tighter. And I said, "How was that?" And she said, "Better." But it got better and better and better, and she made me a better hugger. And once you had a Kroll hug, you were just hooked. And I will miss those hugs. But Suzanne taught me, without even realizing it, probably the most invaluable lesson of my life. Suzanne did not always have an easy time, and things did not always go her way, but she never tried to sugarcoat the world. Somehow she knew the secret. Sometimes you hurt. Sometimes you feel angry. Sometimes you feel cheated. Sometimes you feel so profoundly sad that you don't want to go on. But the important thing is you are feeling. And she taught me that you run to these things because this is life. Feel it. And I have never met anyone relish in feeling everything and facing it head on like Suzanne. And some would say that this is living life fearlessly, but I think that Suzanne would humbly say, hey, sometimes things are scary, really scary, and it's okay to be afraid. And she taught me that you are supposed to cry, you are supposed to be angry because this is life, but you are all supposed to cherish and to love and to celebrate and to relish in it all, not just the good stuff, but yes, the good stuff. And she did that as well, like nobody's business. Sometimes she wanted to say, enough already, I get it. The way that old man's shoe was untied, it's glorious, yes, and symbolic and beautiful, yes, I get it. But the way of looking at the world, her way of looking at the world was what made her an amazing artist, but it's also the key quality that allowed her to be an even more amazing friend. My God, how lucky are all of us who could say that Suzanne was our friend. I am so proud of that. Would Suzanne be the kind of friend that would pick you up and drive you to the airport for a 6 a.m. flight? No, she is not. Not on your life. Good luck. But when you called Suzanne in the middle of the night with a crisis, which I did too many times, you didn't just get a sympathetic ear. You got Suzanne on the other side of the phone saying, okay, so seriously, how did you reach the phone up so high? Did your mommy help you? I mean, really, did you get on a step stool to get to... It was always a short joke before she started with anything. But then you'd hear Suzanne on the other side of the line rolling up her sleeves and saying, okay, are you ready to go deep? Because we're going to solve this thing. And we always did. We dug deep and we shared our darkest thoughts and our biggest fears. Think about that. How rare is that? People don't often even share that part of themselves with their spouses, but I had that. I had that with Suzanne because she was my friend. I'll be forever grateful for that. You know, so many times you have so many regrets that you have a friend that you didn't say that to, that you didn't express that to, and I'm grateful for that too, because I don't think a day went by with Suzanne and I when we need just glory in our friendship, applaud each other for our friendship, and tell each other that we loved each other. So I knew that it would take someone very special to be Suzanne's partner, someone who was ready and strong enough to go on this adventure with Suzanne of living and feeling and facing life head on. And Suzanne would often describe this person as James Gandolfini. But instead, eventually, it was Peter who appeared in her life and not James Gandolfini. But Peter was perfect. He was an amazing, quietly strong presence and a man who loved Suzanne for all that she was. A rock, her rock, the love of her life. And I love him for it. I love you, Peter Spruyt. I love you for loving Suzanne and giving her that love while she was on this planet and giving her the love story that she so deserved. Peter can build anything you see in this room with your hands, which to a Jew from Chicago basically makes him Jesus Christ. But it's what the two of them built in their hearts and with their hearts that's indestructible. And that love brought Harper joy. And they say that motherhood changes you forever, and I know that to be true with Suzanne, because the entrance of Harper Joy created such a blinding light in their lives that it was almost impossible for Suzanne to see any of the darkness. It was kind of annoying. For example, I'm reminded of a game night soon after Harper arrived in which each person was to write on a piece of paper a secret fact about themselves that was true, but people might be surprised about. And a moderator would read the facts, and one by one, the person whose turn it was supposed to guess which secret fact belonged to which person. And eventually, one of these pieces of paper was unfolded, and it read, "I love Harper Joy." And I turned to Suzanne annoyed, and I said, obviously, you don't get the point of the game. It's supposed to be a secret, hard fact to guess. And she looked at me with absolutely no irony at all and said, I know, but it's true. It was conveyed to me that near the end, at the hospital, Suzanne was struggling. And she said, I'm fighting for every inch of my life right now. I can't believe this is my life. But to you, sweet Coles, I say, what a life. What a life. What a life. Look at what love you brought to the world, and the mark you left on it, and the people you touched everywhere you went. What a life you lived. And thank you for teaching me how to live mine. I love you, Crawler. Committee forever.
you played.
Hey, everybody.
Oh, are we
Welcome
back?
Yeah,
Oh.
we're back.
Hi.
Yeah, that
Hi,
was-
everybody.
yeah.
That was a long break. We are very happy to welcome to our studio and our sweet little show an actor, a comic, a funny, as we say in Brooklyn, a funny bastard.
Pick up the pace of your intro. We don't have that
Oh,
much
right.
time.
Actor, comic, father, producer, writer,
And a fantastic friend.
and an amazing human being, may I add. I'm very happy to have you. Thank you for coming onto the
I'm
show.
Very happy to be here.
Thank you.
And by the way, I should apologize to you. This morning I wrote you an email that said, I meant for it to say, I can't wait to see you. Did you see that?
Yeah.
My daughter has been trying to make imprints on my laptop with Play-Doh, and the T is kind of unreliable. So it said, I can wait to see
I
you."
know. I noticed that.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see Antoinette, but I can wait. So I didn't mean to say that, but
It's okay. I got over it because you're here.
yeah.
You're here, and welcome.
Thank you.
There's a lot.
Let's-
There's a lot to talk about.
Let's get on with it.
Let's get on with it.
We just showed that clip of Suzanne, and would you care to talk about it a little bit?
Andy Berman did an incredible eulogy for Suzanne 2 days after she died, and I have no idea how he was able to capture who she is in a few minutes when he was dealing with horrific grief, but he did. It was a gift to everyone who knew her.
Thank you, Andy.
So
Thank you.
that's what you saw as his eulogy, and I put some pictures to it.
I think one of the things that made her so special, besides being another funny bastard, and what makes her so special is that she always fought for the underdog.
She, the more marginalized you were, the more she had your back.
Yes.
At her funeral, we found a lesbian rabbi married to an ex-Catholic Filipina. Basically, yeah, the more people had it in for your particular class, the more she was right there with you.
Yes.
Was that because of her experiences growing up, or is just her soul?
I
or
think it was maybe a little of both. She had a very hard time growing up because of health problems she had. She had when she moved to California, and I won't do justice to this story. She was a skinny, curly-haired Brooklyn Jew who suddenly was placed in a high school in Agora with a bunch of blonde surfer girls, and she was in a body cast at the time with a Brooklyn accent, and so she was always someone who didn't quite fit in, and I think the people who adopted her and who she became friends with were also the people who were kind of on the fringes, so she always identified with them, even when she got herself to a point where she was, loved by a lot of people because she became such a great actress and comedian and writer and friend and so on. But that's my take on it, but I don't know exactly where it all came from.
Right.
Speaking of which, the reason you're here, we're going to talk about
Curlapalooza,
Um,
which is an event that Peter, with
it's an
lots of people, are putting together.
event that Antoinette is putting on with me and a lot of Suzanne's dear friends. After Suzanne passed away, I was trying to come to terms with, first of all, it's horrible on so many levels, and I was trying to figure out if there anything positive could come from it, and I thought about exactly what you alluded to before, how she had the backs of people who were not supported by the world as a whole. And so I thought, why don't we, as a community, put on a fundraiser every year in Suzanne's honor for some group of people Suzanne would have supported. And from that sprung Curlapalooza, which is a stand-up show which will be at the Wiltern on April 1st. and some of my comic friends, predominantly Tig Notaro, who's been a hero in helping organize this, have volunteered their time. Zach Galifianakis is doing the show. Patton Oswalt is doing the show. Brilliant comedian who's not quite as well known as the others, Reggie Watts, is doing the show. He's the only comedian on the show who's done a TED Talk.
Wow.
And it's going to be one of the most amazing lineups. I've been around comedy for much of my life. It's
Right.
one of the most amazing lineups I've been associated with. I'm not performing on the show, but it will be a great night.
Where is it being held again?
It's
What's the date?
The date is April 1st. It's at the Wiltern Theater. You can get tickets at livenation.com, or the show is benefiting a nonprofit that helps transgender youth, which would be near and dear to Suzanne's heart. And the organization is called Survivors Truths. So if you go to survivorstruths.org, there are occasionally specials on tickets posted there. If you wade through the site, or you can go to Live Nation and pay the ticketing fees. But get tickets now, because once this goes public, it will sell out very quickly.
Yes.
Yeah.
And tickets are selling pretty well.
Yeah.
Take us through a little bit of what the evening will be like.
I've been volunteering with this group of youths who are amazing kids, and we're working on some videos that they wrote and they've kind of produced. I'm filming them and trying to edit them. But it's their project, and we're going to make a very short film from them at the beginning to kind of help educate people about how to be their allies. And then the MC of the show is a comic named Ian Harvey, who's advertises himself, I'm not sure if this is completely true, but as the first openly trans stand-up comic. He's a great comic. He's going to bring up the lineup, keep the show moving. Hopefully Dove, who runs the nonprofit, will speak for a couple of minutes, but it will be a hilarious show that will leave you wanting more.
Absolutely. And then there are VIP tables that are for sale. Will you
There
tell us a
are
little bit about
tables,
that?
We have tables that we're calling sponsor tables. You can buy a table for 10 right at the front, which will come with perks, food, gift bags, et cetera, et cetera. So if you have an interest in that, you can contact the nonprofit. And you know, there will be the usual Wiltern concessions. So if you get there from work, you can get food and drinks and so on. So you're not starving for the whole show. But
What time does the show start?
it's at 8 o'clock. Doors open at 7.
And the money goes to raise awareness and support systems and stuff like that?
It goes directly to Survivors Truths, which is the nonprofit that runs Trans Youth Speak. And Trans Youth Speak is a group that works with transgender youth, age 12 to 22. Originally, the nonprofit was contacted by Children's Hospital of LA to help with these kids, and they kind of took over. And I might be getting the facts not completely right, but this is pretty much how it is. So they're helping these kids learn to both deal with their issues and also learn to become advocates for other kids like them. You know, in LA, you have some support system, but if you're a transgender youth in, you know, Missouri or the town of 300 in Oklahoma, you don't really have anyone like you, most likely, and you don't have a support system.
And you don't even know
have
there's a support system out there for you.
So if you remember the It Gets Better, remember as if it's not still going, but the It Gets Better videos that a lot of gay and lesbian people have posted to help kids who are coming out or who haven't come out. This is kind of the trans youth version of that, to help both other kids have hope and also to help everyone else in the cisgender community, which is all of us who aren't transgender, to become better allies to transgender people. So they're A, these kids are doing an amazing thing, and B, their lives are being transformed by this nonprofit. It's a little bit esoteric, but it's a genius program, and it's been very underfunded because there aren't a lot of transgender celebrities and wealthy people to take up this cause. So this benefit will help them immensely.
Oh, that's great.
It is. It's wonderful. Just the idea that we all need to be allies for each other, and causes like that are so undersupported. It sounds like an amazing organization and a great cause.
You know, growing up in Brooklyn, you know, there's a lot of racism. There's a lot of, you know, sexism, homophobia, and it's understandable if you're taught something, and you're taught it's bad, and you're associated with bad, and it's different and it's strange, right? It's understandable to have those feelings, and I think the best way to change those feelings is to help them see what people like that go through.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to a friend of mine years ago when I said, could you imagine, this was about homosexuality, I said, could you imagine if you were forced to sleep with men? Because everyone said, how could you look at a woman that way? You're a pervert every time you look at. They lost their minds.
Mm-hmm.
Just the thought that they would have to do something that they
went against what they wanted
Yeah.
and felt was right for them.
Yeah, they lost their mind, and I think that was the first time they realized what they're going through, because they're so used to seeing it through the filter of you're weird, you're different, you're making a choice, and to also understand that the what is it, reparative therapy, or
Oh yeah.
that's in the courts right now.
Conversion therapy?
Conversion therapy, yeah, conversion therapy or reparative therapy, that doesn't work.
It does worse than not working. It
Yeah.
does even more damage.
It does more
Conversion
damage.
therapy, for those who may not know, is therapy that helps somebody who believes they're
No, it's
gay to become straight.
right. Not helps, but forces them.
And
Tries to force them using hypnosis and things like that.
that's terrible.
And Freud was saying it years ago, you know, that it's useless to try to do, and that there's nothing wrong with your son, ma'am. And that famous letter that he wrote to a woman who wanted her son to be straight. So there's nothing wrong with him. He's just, you know, it's just what it is. You just have to, and then they came out recently and found that it is damaging, and now it's in the courts to kind of stop it, right? I mean, I know it's going back and forth in California right now.
Yeah, I haven't been
put a
completely
ban
on
on it.
top of that issue.
But it's kind of nice to know that there's a lot of evidence, including I think the guy who did we will do research on him today. What was his name?
Robert Spitzer.
It's Robert Spitzer, the psychologist who actually did the study that said it's possible. Yeah, recanted his study, realized it was
wonderful.
flawed, and he's the reason why the ban on that kind of therapy started, because they realized even the founder of that idea was you know,
Realizing that
that it wasn't smart
Effective.
to do and
Yeah.
effective and now dangerous. Right? So that's kind of reassuring to let people know that it's not a choice. But you know what annoys me? Not that that's a choice or not, or you're born with. Who cares? Why don't you have the right to make the choice anyway? Why do we have to defend somebody's choice?
Yeah.
Even if it is a choice, why is that have
why
to
is
be
your
defended?
choice better than my choice?
And why is it anyone else's business?
Right.
And
Exactly.
why does anyone else want? It's the same with like gay marriage. Why, as a straight person, how does that affect you in any way, shape, or form?
Right.
That so it's as you say, it's understandable that people are racist or have bigotry or whatever when they're taught that. But at a certain point, you grow up and you have access to other information, and there's not an excuse
Right.
anymore. It's that you've decided that this is what I believe, and I'm only going to listen to ideas that reinforce my belief, and I'm going to shut everything else out.
It kind of goes back to what we were talking about before Peter joined us, which is that idea of separation, that we're all separate from each other. And you're different than me, and if you're different than me, then you're not a part of me. And I think the more we start to recognize that we're all part of the same thing.
Yeah, and today it's even worse because everyone has their own. The media has become balkanized. There's the news for people who are conservative and news for people who are liberal, and it's not like 40 years ago when
Right.
everyone watched Walter Cronkite. People stay in their own little zones where they're listening to and reading,
Reinforcing their existing belief
existing
system.
beliefs, and they're at all ends of the spectrum. That's a problem, and it takes away people's ability to understand each other. It takes away people's ability to learn and grow because they're limiting the information they're taking in, and also limiting their ability to question that information and make intelligent choices about whether that information is accurate or not. So I don't know how we get out of that, but to me it's more of a problem now than it was.
I think we get out of it by these foundations and these nonprofit organizations that you're working with
And
right now,
showing
what people are going through, showing
Yeah.
that they're human, that they're not there to bug you. They're human, trying to cope and do the best they can based on what they feel and believe and
It's
who
like
they are.
we were watching the prison shows and watching. I mean, the prisons are filled with people who are committing all kinds of crimes, and to suspend judgment for a moment and to look at them as people and to not condone what they've done, but to understand that they're a product of their environment, they're a product of their education or lack of education, and to be able to see them in more of a pure way allows them to have that space for them to perhaps see themselves
Yeah.
as a pure person who can change.
Yeah, and not to get off topic, it's sort of on topic. The nonprofit whose this show benefits also works with prison populations. They have another project called the Inside Out Project that helps incarcerated people and people transitioning. And the prison industrial complex, which it is now, it's a for-profit big business
Yes.
that has an interest in keeping prison populations high, doesn't do a good job of rehabilitating people or training them or helping them be ready when they hit the streets. It's,
That's a wonderful cause as well.
Okay, so this has been a really funny show so far.
Yeah, I know. Well, come on, bring up the funny.
Yeah, bring it funny. Are you
sounds
you
like
performing?
I did stand-up for the first time since Suzanne passed away about a month ago in Palmdale.
That's a funny place.
Yeah. The money I made from the show paid for the sitter. I'm not on really a stand-up schedule now. I go
Right.
to sleep when Harper does. My daughter, she can't quite sleep on her own yet, so I sit with her in the room till she goes to sleep, which means I usually end up falling asleep. So I'm asleep by 9 and awake at 4 in the morning, and that's not a good schedule for
It's
a stand-up.
not a great
Yeah. There, except for those, there's some really, really good 5 a.m. open mics, which I should be hitting.
There's a couple now.
Yeah.
Well, it's a pleasure to see you again, Peter, and
You're an inspiration,
yeah,
Peter.
you really
Okay,
are.
so
really
it's
are.
great to be here.
Well, we're
yeah.
going to
That
wrap it
sound
up.
like a
but,
sign-off?
Yeah, it
Yeah,
really
well,
is
that
a
was
sign-off
fast because we're
it-
coming up on 11:50, which is our
which is
sign-off
amazing.
time.
It just flies by.
It did.
Well, thank you for coming.
Being with us, everybody.
Being with us, and thank you. You know, one of the things I remember about, I think it was your wedding, where everyone seemed to talk about what a great friend you are, and how you're the guy they go to in the middle of the night. You
when
know,
you
if
need
you
to be
need
bailed
something.
out of prison.
I had friends growing up in Brooklyn where, you know, you go to them for the shovel in the middle of the night, but you're somebody that is there no matter what. And I just appreciate who you are, and it's no wonder that Suzanne and you
We're the
found each
couple
other.
that you are. and were.
Right back at you. And my memory from the wedding was you holding Antoinette's purse.
The whole time.
Okay,
So
everyone. we'll see you-
Krullapalooza, everybody, April 1st. It's at the Wiltern Theater in Los Angeles, and tickets can be bought.
LiveNation.com, search for Tig Notaro presents Krullapalooza, or go to the website of the nonprofit Survivors Truths UENradio.org and look for the show, and then look for special discounts. There might be some specials for a limited time.
And look for us. We'll be there.
Right. You
It's
can contact
guaranteed to
us
be an
at
amazing, fun, crazy, heartfelt, beautiful, humane evening. And
April
so please
1st. How
come to it.
appropriate.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to next week, and you can contact us at On the Fringe Show at google.com.
Or Antoinette at onthefringeshow.com, or Joe at onthefringe.com.
Or info at
Fringeshow.com.
Take care, everybody. See you next week.
Bye.
Welcome to the new sound of online radio. Welcome to the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network.
You make me feel like I've been locked out of heaven.
A mix of today's hits and hard-to-find favorites, combined with the most entertaining and intriguing talk anywhere. This is your sound. This is the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network at UENradio.org.